In this video, I am going to be really delving into the North Node in Scorpio placement in the natal birth chart. This is so fascinating to me, and it's a placement that I really want to continue to learn more about because there's so many layers to it, like the sign of Scorpio. There's a complexity to Scorpio energy. So, yeah, I've been very curious about that for months now, and I want to give you a really comprehensive, in-depth, and clear video on this topic, and for those people who have displacement in their birth chart, and also the people who in your own life have this particular placement. Um, so this video can serve to be a help for several different reasons. So I hope that you find it interesting and insightful, and I would encourage you to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos that I'll be making, not only on this series of where I'm taking you through all the zodiac signs, all the placements of the north and south nodes, but just in general with all the other astrology videos like astrology forecast for new moons, full moons, planetary transits. I give you so much, and I really hope that you consider doing that, and I hope that you consider sharing this video if you think that it would be inspiring or helpful for somebody else. So, now delving into this particular placement. If you have this placement, by the way, I am making this video. I've already said that before, that's totally redundant. But I have a North Node in Taurus and South Node in Scorpio. So I think that, one of the huge reasons why I am so compelled to learn more is because this placement is opposite my natal North Node and South Node signs. So, if you are born with a South Node in Taurus and North Node in Scorpio, because the nodes travel together and they always travel, they're always opposite one another. The South Node deals with what we're leaving behind, our past, the past early life, or some astrologers believe it relates to past lives. It relates to your talents and gifts and abilities of what you're familiar with, of what you mastered, and you're coming in and you're really comfortable with it, or it's known for you, and where you can feel held back, and where you can feel like you're just swimming in a fishbowl, and continually spinning on a hamster wheel and not getting anywhere and not finding meaning and purpose in this lifetime. Well, that's where your North Node comes in, and that's where you need to balance this out. The North Node can be challenging, uncomfortable. It can be a stretch for you as a soul, because to develop and to expand and to evolve in this lifetime requires you to learn something new, something just that your soul, sort of path that your soul has never gone on before, and you can move into brand new foreign areas, and it may feel foreign, but ultimately you will feel happy, you will feel content, and you'll just feel like your life really matters, and you're living for a reason. You're living for you to feel like you are reaching a ring of infinity, or it doesn't have to be a ring of infinity, but climbing to the top of a mountain peak. the north node is what you have to strive for. It's always opposite the south node, and it's about integrating and balancing those north node qualities into your, south node, and releasing the shadow sides of the south node using the high vibration qualities of the south node to move into your north node. It is about balance. It is not about neglecting the south node. It's not either or, it's both and. So dealing with the south node in Taurus, and north node in Scorpio, I know of a lot of people who um, have this placement. I know someone in my personal life who has this placement, and I know of several YouTubers, several astrologers actually that I follow that have this particular placement, and I am very attracted um, to it, and I have huge, deep respect for the people who have this placement because it is opposite my own North Node placement. And, I feel that the people who have this placement can teach me and move me into my North Node in Taurus because they've mastered their South Node in Taurus qualities down to a T. And so they're moving in the direction of Scorpio, and I am sort of teaching them about Scorpio while they're teaching me about Taurus. And so I'm moving up, I'm growing, while they're teaching me and I'm, teaching them. So it is both and. Um, and, just a little teaser here that the Northern Scorpio is about sort of, it does deal with, you know, your relationships with other people. And on a kind of basic level, it can be helping other people. So maybe, you're sort of reaching out to others. So that's huge with this placement. And I think that, how I define a nodal soulmate is having how somebody who has their nodes opposite your nodes, and that is huge for growth. There's just a karmic bond where you're sort of meant to be in a relationship with this person where they can teach you something and move you to a next level, move you beyond just your south node comfort zones, move you into, your north node energy. And you can move them into their north node path, their destiny line, their north star, if you will. So, if you have this placement, you were born in the years of 1939, 19. I think the end of 56, 1957, the beginning part of 1958, in the years of 1975 and 1976, of if you were born in 1995, and for the younger people who are interested in astrology, during the Pluto and Capricorn generation. And I can tell you the dates for this. If you were born between August 27th of 2012 through February 23rd of 2014, you have this placement. And so, as I'm recording this, the North Node is in Scorpio. You may be watching this at whatever time, and you probably had or have your crossed or reverse nodal return, where the North Node and South Node are exactly opposite as they are in your natal birth chart when it hits the same degree as it is in your natal birth chart. I have a whole nother video about the nodal return and reverse nodal return on my channel. So, delving into this placement, and I noticed on other videos that I know the information so well, I tend to jump to things, and I don't want to do that. I just want to do it gradually, step by step, just like Taurus energy. And so I want to lay it down really, to the point and very thoroughly for you. So the South Node in Taurus. So people with the South Node in Taurus, from the sort of Vedic perspective of past life and past life karma, um, they were probably landowners. They were probably people who worked on farms, people who really plowed land. They were probably property owners, or people who really just knew how to use and how to work with the earth's resources. Um, and these people were very, very self-sufficient in past lifetimes. They knew what they needed to do, and they relied on themselves. They were really putting one foot in front of the other to achieve what they wanted in terms of gaining material possessions. Um, because they wanted to rely on themselves and material possessions. The South Node in Taurus has a deep association with material possessions, and those objects that you have are really um, important to you. And I think both the South Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio both deals with holding on to something, and the North Node in Scorpio and Taurus deals with releasing and letting go. And sort of coming inside going within yourself to find the answers. That's what they both have in common, but in different ways. So the South Node in Taurus deals with physical attachments. And these material possessions, you could you could have boatloads of all those possessions, and you may have been, hoarders. You may have had a lot of stuff, on your house, or you may have a huge pack of, possessions that you in this lifetime may need to release. I was seeing an episode of Super Nanny where, if you've ever seen that show, where this mother was holding a bag of, you know, stuff, to represent the burdens that she was carrying with, maintaining the, family and being responsible for the family and all those issues. So she had this bag of possessions, and then at the top of the mountain, Super Nanny had her release that burden that she had to, that burden that she had to carry up on top of the mountain. She released the burden, and she saw a rainbow on the top of that mountain, which was very symbolic of finding that kind of inner peace when you release that burden. And a fear that comes in with the South Node in Taurus is losing your material possessions, and having the deep need to hold on to those possessions. Another instance where, just in general, where you can find this in books and movies, this, sort of archetype of the South Node in Taurus. If I've said the South Node in Scorpio, then I did not mean that. Is in Just Add Magic, which is an Amazon Prime series. And in this series, Hannah, which was one of the girls of the trio of three girls who got a magic cookbook and cooked from it, and then these mysteries were revealed to them, and they sort of, there's several seasons of it, and they have these sort of spells that they have to make, and problems that they have to solve. So anyway, in this one episode, they made a spell where they had to face their fears, um, And so it was a trail mix recipe. They used magical ingredients for these recipes. They were walking in the woods, and the one character, Hannah, was carrying a bag, a huge pack of, you know, all these things that you would need. If anyone gets stung, I have this, and that need to hold on to so much. And then she felt as she was walking further, on and on and on, that it got heavier and harder to carry. So when she let it go, even though it was difficult and it was uncomfortable, and it didn't feel instinctually right, she did that, and she found, um, you know, she felt better afterwards, and it was a great support to her. And she, felt that inner knowing that, I don't need to hold on to these things. And, it's just, she sort of grew in that type of way of, releasing that bag of possession. So anyway, I thought that I would tie that in here. Um, so, if you've ever heard of putting one foot in front of the other, um, that's what Taurus South nodes did to provide for themselves and others. So, again, self-reliance is huge here. That innate need, okay, I'm coming in, I have these really strong, rigid boundaries. I'm going to stick to them, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to rely on myself. And so the South Node and Taurus people are deeply, five senses and being in the present moment, tapping into the present moment, which is the upside of the South Node and Taurus, but a deep association with the five senses, and your life around you, and you can actually tap into that to move into your North Node and Scorpio. Um, so that's the high road of Taurus energy. But we're talking about the low road of Taurus, which can be stubborn, and it can be a hoarder, holding on to resources, locking things away in drawers, and not willing to give them away. Um, so knowing what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel happy, content, at peace. And there's a lot of stuff that you may need to share and give away, because and I realize that this saying does not always apply to every situation. There is such a saying as sharing is caring. And when you share those resources, when you give them away to bring and buy, or an auction, or give them away to people, especially giving and receiving gifts at a holiday time, or a birthday celebration, there is this warm energy, that maybe may feel like you're moving in the right direction in this lifetime. So sharing and giving it away. And it's super important not to oversimplify the placement of the North Node in Scorpio. Um, so I just want to say that. So sharing your resources, willing to give them away, getting rid of what you don't need, and keeping what you do need. But the more you can do this, the more you can tap into the energy of inheritance, which is the eighth house of inheritance, other people's resources. And the more you can give away the resources that you have and share them and be willing to share them, then, possibly the better off you'll be. And I don't want to tell you what's right for you. I don't want to tell you what will make you feel better and more fulfilled, but I'm just saying in general. Because that North Node is your soul kind of calling you, you're being called upon to move towards, the house of Scorpio. So, with all this hard work that you did, you sort of what was neglected, what was the missing piece of the South Node, because that's ultimately, what the South Node can indicate, what is not brought into balance, what is lacking here. So you had very little time and you didn't open up enough to intimate connections with other people. Really getting to know them at a deeper level, tapping into their energy, sharing your energy and receiving their energy, their understanding the characteristics and traits about them, understanding what their talents are, what their interests are, what their goals are, and also, um, you know, really, I think that, and I'm just going to say this, that I think that being a therapist or counselor in this lifetime is going to work wonders for you, because what is that all about? It is about, receiving and listening, to others and hearing their stories of, how they are suffering. Really not being afraid to listen to another person's, talking about their, issues and their own, things, and sort of, you are giving them your practical advice. But it's important not to shut down. It's important to be open and, and receive, um, and then give in turn. Um, but, so, intimate connections. Yeah, so deeply connecting with another person. Now that's your Scorpio North Node, is you can heal their shadows, their wounds, and you can help them on, you can help people on their journeys of healing. Um, and so, yeah, acknowledging the shadow, acknowledging death, acknowledging the darker themes of life, which is Scorpio. On the downside, there is a rigidity and there's a stuckness to the way that you do things, to your own way of doing things that you can come in with. You know, that, this particular way of doing things and you're going to stick with it. And it's that need to stick with it. I've always done it this way, and I know this, and it's familiar, and I'm going to stick with it. Um, this particular placement of the South Node and Taurus, North Node and Scorpio could possibly more difficult to move into your North Node to balance out your North Node qualities, because Taurus is fixed Earth. It likes to hold on to what is familiar, the comforts of life. It likes things to be consistent and routine, and the way that things have always been. Um, so it can be challenging, especially if you have any planets that are conjunct that South Node, or any planets in the sign of the South Node. It can, but there's a positive side to that, where you can master the positive qualities of your South Node with all those placements, to move into your North Node. So that's the advantage of having a lot of planets in that sign that your South Node is in, and having a lot of that South Node energy. Um, so yeah, there's a stuckness and a rigidity to, your way of doing things. You come in with an inherent need, an innate need for safety and security. Um, you know, of safety and security. Real craving for stability, especially, financial, stability, keeping, all your resources and intact. And yeah, safety is also huge here. Because Taurus is about the creature comforts, of life. And, one of those is we long for certainty and security. And that North Node in Scorpio can help you move into the uncertainty and embrace the uncertainty of life. Um, in the early part of life, especially childhood, you may have been, you could be able to be very self-sufficient. And yeah, so working hard for what you have, working hard for what you value is something that you're an energy that you are familiar with, where you're, putting your all into, what you have, um, and, putting that work into, manifest it and, bring it to fruition. Um, yeah. So, Taurus is a stubborn sign, but ultimate, but there's a will. Taurus is very willful. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep on this path until I reach this goal, until I achieve this, plan that I've set out to achieve. So that's the high road of, Taurus energy. Um, you know, but, the downside is, just closed off, stubborn, and also spiritual narcolepsy. I just want to throw that idea into this as well. Because this life is not about spiritual narcolepsy for you. It really is not. Um, it's about stepping into co-creation. You're not the only one. Embracing, higher power, the divine, you're divinely connected to, all things. Yeah. So that's what you need to know about the South Node in Taurus. Now, moving to the Scorpio end of the spectrum, it was so interesting because I remember really, really clearly the last time that the North Node was in Scorpio, back in 2012. I did this thing when I was little. It was a pretend thing that I made up. It was called Others Others. I would pretend to sit in a room pretending to teach, children, students. I would do a joke or a little game and a, warm-up activity at the beginning, and then I would have them divide into groups, and then they would do, several different things with that. And, one group would go over here and do this and that. That idea of others. Um, you know, what is your relationship to other people? Like when you hear people teaching, preaching, giving advice about, respecting others, being there for others, taking care of, other people. Like whenever you hear that, how does that make you feel? Um, what is your relationship to that word and the meaning of that word in your own life? Could that tell you how sort of sucked down into, your South Node, lower vibration qualities to your South Node, that you may be? Or are you closer to moving up into your North Node, where your soul's sort of found your North Node and you're, starting to move in that direction? It isn't just a gradual linear process of moving in that North Node and moving in that direction alone. It, takes your whole lifetime, and it takes, again, that balance between the North and the South poles. So, delving into this North Node, this deals, Scorpio is a sign of intensity, going all into something, really squashing, really sucking so much out of life, and, taking risks, risk taking, getting out of your comfort zone, and transformation. Um, letting the old version of yourself die away to move into a new version of yourself. And growing and sort of, you know, evolving in a, because Pluto rules death, rebirth, and uh, transformation. So that's one of the really important lessons for the North Node in Scorpio. Um, on a more basic level, not the deep Scorpio level, but the simplified level of this is, I'm sure that we've all heard working smarter, not harder. Um, it's about finding the most, really useful and perhaps faster and more convenient way of approaching things and doing things. Where somebody else may have the answers and somebody else may, okay, well, here, let me show you this. This is an easier um, way of approaching this. And are you receptive to that? I mean, it can be as small as that. Now, I don't want to confuse you because the North Node in Libra, I'm sort of crossing into the North Node in Libra here. And could those people who have these ideas of doing things better, of, living a better, bigger life, be, I just want to throw in there, could they do it better than you? Although I don't like to do that. I don't like to, say that. So I'm not the most in agreement with saying that, but it can be, your relationship to receiving help from another person. Um, you know, so it can be, with this, you and your relationship to another person and achieving your goals with that other person can be better than your ego thought that it would be, can be, it's sort of better than you thought that it would be. Better, better and bigger than you could have imagined it being. Um, had you not had this relationship and get to know this person and moved on this path, then your life would be smaller and, less expansive and less, meaningful. So uh, it also relates to merging your power with another person. Um, and, again, connecting, showing receptivity towards other people, um, including their advice and way of doing things. And with this, your contribution is to empower another person and leading them towards greatness. Another career field for the North Node in Scorpio is being um, a motivational speaker or a life coach, or anyone who is helping others, empower them and achieve their visions, achieve their goals, being self-sufficient, where you can teach them your South Node lessons. So you can find that when you're helping others as your goal, you're not fully focused on yourself and what you need to do for yourself and all of that. What about another person, helping them along? And there's sort of I think there's a term for this that um, there's just a gift of that, that you would probably feel from moving that direction. So um, I think resigive is a word. The gift that you get from giving, and also receiving. And Dee Wallace, who is I think a spiritual teacher, life coach, who played in Extraterrestrial, had that word, and I just want to bring this into this video here. So Understanding that life isn't black and white, understanding the depths in life, understanding the deeper meanings of life, understanding possibly the more uh, darker aspects of life. And if crises happen, because security could be shaken up, and if you have a crisis or some type of trauma, or that something could be, if the shoes fall from the sky and you have all this stability, but then you're hearing the you know neighbors yelling and out and doing all those kind of things. Because I remember when the North Node was in Scorpio 10 years ago, the neighbors were really out. um, where I live. But anyway, so but just a crisis, in general, like, losing your bags that you packed, or getting into an accident, or whatever it is. That through crisis you can become more, stronger, more resilient. You can become more stepping into that version of yourself that says, yes, I don't need to rely on these things that make me feel secure. I can turn within, and I can find that um, that security within myself. So, embracing crisis, the courage to step into the unknown. That song from Frozen 2, Into the Unknown. That song, I think, really speaks deeply to the North Node in Scorpio, and also Sagittarius as well. But so the courage to step into the unfamiliar in your life. Letting go and releasing attachments and don't serve you is yet another lesson. Not continuing to be in this position or this job that you're comfortable with and familiar with, but it does not fulfill you on a soul level. And it doesn't bring you that joy, that motivation to keep going, that sense of, that you're getting somewhere. So, an attachment that you have could be, the need to control and be, in charge and in control of your life. That, letting go of that control of having things your way. And, humility is huge here. It goes back to, receiving the help from another person, the ideas of, other people. That's more also the North Node in Libra too. But, surrendering your ego, tapping into your soul, huge. And also, the South Node in Taurus needs to evolve in the way of trusting another person, putting your trust into somebody else. That they are not going to, that you're not going to give them this thing and they're going to just, lose it or take something away, where, you can move into a relationship where you can earn that trust. Because it may be scary to, give your trust over to another person, or, start a relationship with that other person, because you may lose your own sense of footing, grounding, identity. And you feel like, oh, the only way is to do it yourself, and if you want it done right, do it yourself. And I'm going to trust myself because I know thyself, I know it's right for me, etc. But this life is about letting go of that constant need to always do everything yourself, and always hold on to, those objects, or, whatever it is. But also, yes, you can be self-sufficient, do what you need, for yourself, but also you can accept and embrace that Northern and Scorpio side of things. So anyway, um, the willingness to ask for help. Again, I want to come back to that. Um, and establishing where you can find your own inner power, your inner security, your inner peace, your inner wealth, where it isn't, money, dollars and coins. It's your inner wealth, where you can step into gratitude for the present moment and what you already have, and being content with what you already have. That, this feeling of not having enough. Well, it's time to, release that and realize that you have enough, and you have what you need. And, you know, losing sort of this heavy attachment to the material world, and, moving, just sort of spiritually trusting life. Um, and inner strength, coming back to that idea. So, knowing that you have what you need in the present moment. Embracing change is another lesson here. Taurus wants to keep everything the same, and Scorpio is about change. It is about transformation. So embracing that too. Um, it's about being willing to change something in your life, and bring it down to what's most important to you. Not get caught up in all the other things, all the excess that you may need. And Scorpio deals with the secrets, the more occult, hidden side of life. And so when you can dig deep into that, including the motivations of other people, or the secrets of life, that's also huge. And if things are taken from you, God or your higher power will take things away from you if they're not meant for you, and for your highest good. So rejection is God's protection, and accepting loss, accepting things being taken away from you is huge. I was reading an article about through advancedastrology.com, talking about the North Node in Scorpio, and it spoke about what have you gained through losing something. So yeah, so that's also something. Another side of this is being more vulnerable, feeling your feelings, and being open about them, owning your shadow side, acknowledging your shadow side, feeling your feelings, of what you're feeling, and expressing those feelings, and sitting with them, allowing them to be present with you is huge. And also trusting your own intuition is another theme here. Your own inner knowing, instead of always relying on your logical mind and ego. So that is really what it comes down to. I know this was a longer video, and I hope I didn't dazzle you or give you too much here. But that is really all that I have to say about this placement in your natal chart. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you found it worthwhile, and bye for now.